welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today I'm joined by Brian McHenry. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So, why don't we start, Brian, by you telling us a little bit about yourself and what
Yeah.
are you currently doing?
I've been in technology in a variety of different capacities for about 25 years now. Everything from IT operations, network engineering, and really mostly over the last 10, 20 years in cybersecurity. And lately, after working at a number of different cybersecurity vendors, I've been doing a lot of fractional advisory work for product strategy, go-to-market strategy for some cybersecurity startups, especially in the AI security space.
And you spent 16 years at F5, if I'm not decide that the next move was going out on your own with Verant.
It really became obvious to me that I had something to offer when a lot of people that I worked with in the past started reaching out to me and saying, Brian, I'd like to pick your brain for a minute. I think I want to bounce some ideas off you. I'm starting this new thing. And so I would sit down for an hour, a half hour, and provide some insight and some advice. And then next thing you know, it's happening on a weekly or every couple of days, depends on the who I'm working with. And so I just noticed that I was getting a lot of inbound just based on my reputation and my contacts and my network. And it was, really kind of an organic thing. And eventually I just said, let me just put something around this. I don't know where it's going to go, but this is a way for me to make people aware that I'm available to do this kind of work.
Okay, that's a great place to be in. And when a cybersecurity founder comes to you with some kind of product or some early traction, but they don't have a real product organization or like go-to-market motion, what does the first, let's say, 90 days look like?
We really want to start off by talking about, what does the product do? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And that's the one thing that I really try to, get honed in on early is if you're not really clear on the problem you're kind of trying to solve, what'll happen is you'll get engaged with an initial customer, and the customer will start guiding you in different directions based on something that's very important to them. That might just be maybe only a few degrees away from the thing that you started out doing. And that's the thing that really can divert you from a really successful building of your business. Because if you get pulled in too many different directions by your early customers, then you end up doing maybe a few things or a bunch of things okay, but not one thing really well. And as a startup, it's really important to stay hyper-focused on the problem you think is important to solve. And that's probably the first 30 days is like really honing the answer to that question. What is the problem we're solving? Who do we solve it for? And that's the next step is once we know the problem we're solving, and who are we solving it for? And we call that the ideal customer profile or the ICP. And we build from there. So what's the problem? Who's the ICP? And then we start to, test that out in the market. And as they get feedback from customer engagements, and as part of that, sometimes I will bring in, customer contacts of my own to, make introductions and see if there's, something that a good fit there. That's when we start to really get good sense of, based on that feedback, what we call product market fit. And that's the key thing. So you start with the problem, you get the ideal customer profile, which will evolve, right? The ideal customer profile will evolve as you start to work on product market fit. And that's the sort of the three steps over, a 90-day or sometimes a 6-month engagement on like a retainer type of basis where I'll check in and spend a certain amount of time and we'll discuss what deliverables look like.
Definitely, ICP is really the key here, almost to any business.
Yeah.
And you've also said that tool sprawl is the number one problem in cloud security. Could you break that down?
Tool sprawl is essentially, as new technologies or new types of threats emerge in cybersecurity, you acquire yet one more tool that specifically addresses this one thing. And that's, really prevalent with AI right now. So whether it's Gen AI or agentic AI, enterprises are trying to figure out how do I secure the use of this? And there's so many different facets of this. Even after you get past, initially Gen AI could just be, how does my company use the big, Gen AI providers, ChatGPT or Claude or what have you? And then the other side of it is, what if I want to host my own LLM? I want to have a private instance. how do I secure that? What if I want to have an instance that I maintain that is accessible to my customers? There's a lot of different angles and facets of AI security. And so you can end up with 10 AI security tools really easily as an enterprise. That's just one example. Now you can imagine over the history of networking and the internet and cloud and mobile, there's all these different sort of major disruptions that have happened over the years. And those are the kinds of things that generate tool sprawl. As we've seen with cloud security, is a great example of this. There were a whole bunch of cloud security vendors, and eventually they went away or got acquired by the likes of large platform providers, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, other large cybersecurity vendors went out and added cloud security tools to their platform and made it easier on some of their larger customers to say, all right, I've got one vendor who provides me the set of tools that I need, other than 20 vendors. And the reality is that most large organizations have a lot of vendors and are always looking for ways to consolidate.
Or to their product versus if it's just a marketing checkbox.
The startup, it's a little easier because they're starting with usually a very narrow problem that they look at the market and they don't see a good solution for. Usually, when they're saying AI, it's because they're solving a problem with AI, or AI they're using AI to solve an older problem more uniquely. And so with a startup, it's usually really easy to figure out, is AI relevant here? And it almost always is. For startups, they're stretched on resources, so whatever they can leverage, something that's a force multiplier, AI, whether it's agentic, whether it's Gen AI, it's always going to be valuable. I think the bigger question, and I don't engage this as much on this front in my own personal business, but having worked for a large company, like Checkpoint, can tell you that their use of AI is legitimate, but sometimes it's not always the main thing, right? They've added it on, or they started with something that was more machine learning and have evolved it over time, as new tools have become available. So I think, to your question of, is it AI or is it just AI just being sort of tacked on for marketing buzz or what have you? I think that's more of a thing that you'll see with, an established vendor who's trying to, refresh, an existing solution. And that's also why you see, I mentioned F5, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, they've all made acquisitions of small, AI security vendors.
And you were a sales engineer. What did that building the product?
So for your audience, I'll just talk a little bit about what a sales engineer is, because I think there's some misconceptions of it. I know I had some before I became one. One, the sales engineers are often the most technical people you'll work with. Not, the sales part doesn't diminish their technical skills. What it tends to be is that they are very hyper focused on the products that they support, whether they work for a vendor or they work for a reseller. They have a certain set of products and they know them probably better than anybody on earth. And that's where their value comes into a customer, is to go to a customer and help them properly architect the solution so that they're not trying to solve problems, with the wrong vendor's solution, or they're trying to make something that, isn't meant to do a certain thing, do something that it's not supposed to, and that ends up not being very supportable. So a good SE is going to, make sure that you're getting the right solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. I looked at, when I was an SE, moving from the customer side, I really looked at it as an opportunity to make sure, customers were successful. And the best part about being an SE is, when customers really call you back and say, that the solution that we worked on together, it turned out to be, really, game changing for our enterprise, the case may be. Sometimes it's like, hey, if I hadn't deployed the security solution that you proposed, we would have gotten hacked by this other company over here. So you really get a lot sort of, fulfillment back from being an SE. And the other part about being an SE, especially with a vendor, is that you're on the inside of the process, right? So as a customer, you know something about the technology that your vendors are interfacing with, engineers, with product managers, and you're helping to influence the product roadmap and helping to, and you're deeply understanding how this stuff works more than, anybody outside of a company possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at cybersecurity companies, what do you see as the biggest mistake that these companies make over and over when it comes to their go-to-market?
I think the biggest mistake that I see companies make is trying to, expand their portfolio in a way that doesn't make sense. You're going and acquiring a company that's not core to what they do. Often those acquisitions don't work out. It's very difficult. It's on paper, it looks, you take this company, you add it to the portfolio, you spend some money on it, you bring them in, you bring the people into your team, you bring the technology, and you do the integration work. And that's, it's very easy to underestimate how difficult that is. Bringing people into a new organization, just the people part is difficult. But then trying to match up the technology and give your customers more value based on your existing product and platform and adding this new thing to it. How do you make 1+1 = 3 instead of, 1+1 = it's just 2, and you could have just bought them separately. I think that's the thing that I see a lot of vendors make the mistake. They go and, acquire something because it's hot or because, they're hearing customers talk about it. And then, they don't do enough due diligence to look at what the challenges and integration might be, whether that's on the people side or the technology side. So, and then the other thing is, back to the go-to-market thing, is looking at, who do I have in my organization as a cybersecurity vendor who can reach the ideal customer profile, who can reach that buyer in the enterprise. And sometimes something that will look like it's a natural fit to your portfolio is, so, I'm an application security vendor. Of course, I'll add cloud security to my suite. That makes perfect sense. And maybe you'll find out that, well, the people that buy this cloud security vendors products, they're all developers. And I normally sell to people who are security operations. And so I'm going to have trouble selling this product to security operations because everybody I know as a company, is in this one part of the customer, and who this product works for from a go-to-market perspective is really the messaging, and everything is towards, application development or just somebody completely outside of who you normally sell to. So, coming back to that concept of ideal customer profile, you really want to make sure as you make acquisitions and you make strategic decisions to expand, even if it's not an acquisition, you're just saying, do some organic development internally. We're going to enter this new space that we think is reach that buyer from a go-to-market perspective. Do I have the marketing reach? Do I have the brand recognition? Sometimes having a great brand in cybersecurity will stop you from ever getting to an application developer because they don't care. Sometimes you have a great brand and it can limit you in other markets. So you got to really understand who you can reach based on your brand, based on your salespeople, and based on your channel network of resellers, based on your market messaging and brand. So there's a lot that goes into it, but that's the kind of things that you have to think about. It's not just as simple as, hey, we want to add one more set of capabilities. As who buys those capabilities, who uses them, and can we get to them?
And looking into the future, Brian, what's your vision for Verant, and where should people find you if they're building something in the cybersecurity space?
I'm frequently at big conferences, and ironically, I'm not at RSA conference this week, which almost every year I'm there, but this week I've decided to sit it out. But typically, I'm at Black Hat. I'll probably be at AWS Reinforce in a few months, I would think. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Security B-Sides chapter in New York City, and we'll be probably having our next event in October. So it's another place to find me in person. But you can also find my company Verant at verant.io. That's verant.io. And the future of that is, I'm going to keep taking things, somewhat opportunistically, take things as they come. If you need help with the things that I've had a lot of experience, both as a customer in sales, and I was also a product leader at F5. I've got a lot of different perspectives when it comes to, building product strategy, building go-to-market strategy. I'm more than happy to help anybody that wants to bounce some ideas off of, and different ways to engage with me, and always just say hello. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm pretty easy to find, and you can more than happy to connect with people there.
Great, Brian. So thanks for joining the podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.
Will do. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.